You're listening to the Gender Reveal Party podcast. I'm your host, Jay Pryor. This isn't your usual gender reveal party. There will be no baby sex parts. This is the real reveal, where we reveal gender through stories of brave humans willing to share their lived experience. Enjoy the listening. I sure enjoy making it. Hi, and welcome back to the Gender Reveal Party. I'm your host, Jay Pryor, and today we're talking about drag. You can't talk about gender and the queer community without talking about drag. In fact, if you don't know this, the queer movement was started, excuse me, at a bar in New York City called Stonewall. And Stonewall was a riot that happened when the police had continually broken and busted into this bar and arrested people over and over and over again. These people were being brutalized. Back then, you couldn't even wear a piece of clothing that was the opposite gender without you could get arrested for that. And so finally, these people decided that they had had enough and they fought back. And the people that fought back were trans women, drag queens, and butch women. You see, back then, the people that were out were the people who couldn't hide. So gender played a huge piece in that. When you have an already really effeminate man or someone who likes to put dresses on, they can't hide. And so those people that were the ones that were out in the world, and those people that were the ones who lost their lives and put their lives on the line for this movement. We honor our trans women, drag queens, and butches every year when we celebrate Pride, when we celebrate the beginning of this movement, but all the time, drag is something that's important to this community and has a rich, rich history. The first time I ever experienced a drag queen, I was 19 years old. You might as well think of me as like a bumpkin or a hayseed, right? I'm coming out of a small town in Kansas. I've never even, it's hard for me even to deal with my own gayness, let alone have exposure to all the queerness that I have now, or the loveliness that is queer. So I'm 19 years old, so it's 1985. I'm in Topeka, Kansas, and this drag queen, I'm at a drag show, and this drag queen has just got the audience in the palm of her hand. I mean, she is just working this crowd, and I am gobsmacked. Like, this woman is gorgeous, and she's dancing, and she's lip syncing, and she's got the crowd going. And I don't know what the look was that I had on my face, but at some point she comes over to me, nudges me, and winks, and says, "Don't forget what's under this skirt, honey." I had forgotten. I'm not gonna lie. She was a beautiful woman, and it embarrassed me. Obviously, it shocked me. I'm 19 years old, and my face got bright red. The point was, I fell in love with drag queens right then and there. And throughout my life, of course, again, you can't be queer without experiencing drag queens. And so I've known a lot of drag queens. I've been to a lot of shows. I know about the pageantry. I've had friends involved and friends in high levels in pageantry. And I've even done drag. I did a drag king show before I transitioned, and that's a whole other story, but I'll tell you about that some other day. Today, I want to introduce you to my friend, Brandon Eiseman. When I first moved back to Lawrence, Kansas, I started hearing about this human and this drag queen by the name of Deja Brooks. And I didn't know what this was about, but I soon found out that Deja Brooks, aka Brandon Eisman, aka Deja Brooks, has become a community fixture. She's a leader in our community. People look to her and invite her places to help them promote things. So in this little tiny town of 100,000 people that we have, it's not a tiny town. We have a town or our city in Lawrence is 100,000 people. We're a pretty eclectic community, and it's pretty cool that this young human has turned drag into something that our community loves, that our community appreciates, and now that our community has had exposure to in a powerful way. Anytime that I witness him performing and the way that our town, all these straight people respond to him, it blows my mind, because I know that what that means is that it makes space for those younger people. So I honor him and I honor his work. And once again, I thank him and all my friends for coming and sharing their stories. And I'm going to shut up now because I really am excited to introduce you to Brandon Eiseman. Welcome to the gender reveal party where we are the real reveal, revealing gender, not baby sex parts. And today I have my friend and my community builder friend with me in my town. Welcome. Hi, Brandon Eiseman.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Jay, for having me on. It's great to be able to virtually visit with you
I know, I
during
haven't
this
seen you in a while.
crazy time we're still living.
I know, isn't it nuts?
Yeah.
So thank you. Thanks for coming on the show. And I'm so excited. This is a labor of love for me. I am literally doing this because it's fun. So I know a lot of the things you do because they're fun, and you make a big difference in the world with that. And that's my goal, is like do this fun thing and have it also make a difference in the world. And one of the things I want to share with our audience, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself, is for me, who you are for me. Oh, I'm going to cry. Who you are for me is this amazing human that brings a lens of fun, frivolity, but also then this open, like welcoming, first of all, gender reveal, like you're someone who is a gender reveal human, but also like community building inside. It's like you take our whole town and help them be less homophobic and transphobic. And it just every time that I see you or I'm at one of your events, I am so inspired. And mostly because of the work you do with so many straight people. My God. Seriously, like you're so generous. So I just appreciate you and thank you so much for being here. I'd love
Yeah.
for you to
We all
introduce
have
yourself and kind of tell people who you are and what you do.
sure. Well, hi there. My name is Brandon Edson. Um, by day, I give you a father, hardworking, multi-hat wear community member, and sometimes by day, but mostly by evening and weekends, I give you Deja Brooks, who is a soccer mom by day, but um, bitchy drag queen by night, who likes to spread awareness and raise awareness for our community and nonprofits and um, just building a platform for our community to have more of an open mind and an open heart when it comes to all walks of life that we have in this amazing community.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you do such a great job with that. And it's fascinating to me. I would love for you to tell as much of your story as you're willing to. Like, how did you come to drag? Like, what had you, you know, decide to
Yeah,
put on a dress?
right, right. Like, why? Yeah. Well, in high school and in college, like theater has always been kind of like my backdrop of who I was, whether that's singing or being on stage. And so after college, I'm like, what is that for me? What does that look like? And I started exploring, finding myself, and going to the gay bars. I was slowly coming out of the closet, and we would go to the cabaret in Kansas City, and I would see these entertainers, these performers on stage, and I would think to myself, gosh, they can do that, and I could probably do that, and maybe do it a little bit better. I don't know. We'll see. But um, every little drag baby is born at Halloween, and so we
That's hilarious.
yeah, and so we had Jack Flanagan's. This is gonna date myself here in Lawrence, but Jack Flanagan's was one of the bars that we had here in Lawrence. We never really had a true gay bar. We always had kind of like pride night or family nights, if you will. And Jack Flanagan's would host a monthly show, and so that's kind of where Deja Brooks got her start. And then Missy B's in Kansas City became a nest for me. Several of the queens there kind of took me under their fabulous gowns and started morphing me into who I am. But I'm an independent drag queen, so lots of queens have families. They are part of families and they have a last name that they carry on. But Deja has some great aunties who helped inspire and lead me to where I am. But um, yeah, drag has just been an outlet for me to perform, to step out of my comfort zone of Brandon and to be able to provide a different persona. Um, it probably is still a little bit my persona as well, but it gives me um, more of an excuse to be able to be super fabulous um, in a community that is still evolving and adapting to diversity and change.
Right. And I mean, and you do it fabulously. And so Deja Brooks, just so people are really clear, Deja Brooks is your drag name, and Deja is a drag queen that is frequently seen around Lawrence, Kansas. Like she'll show up at Reading Rainbow and read to kids, and
Yeah,
she'll show up at
yeah, like
nonprofits and promote events and do all kinds of stuff. And then occasionally we have a performance, right?
right. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, everything from, like you just mentioned, our Reading Rainbow at the Lawrence Public Library. We just celebrated our 5th year for that. And
Fabulous.
so the fact that we can have drag queen story time is pretty stellar here in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I have Transformations, which is a charity event that, provides resources and information regarding different nonprofits here in town. And I have a hefty part in a lot of nonprofits hosting their charitable events that take place here in town. So
Yeah.
I am definitely seen in this community.
Oh, yeah, you are. In fact, my son saw a picture of you the other day, and I said, "You know who that is?" And it was your picture as Brandon. And he was like, "I don't know who that is." I said, "That's Deja Brooks." He was like, "What?" I said,
But
That's Brandon." And Brandon dresses up in his Deja Brooks. And he was like, "Deja Brooks is a man?" I was like,
well,
"Yes,
yay!
yes,
Wow.
she is."
Yeah.
And he was like, "How does he make his voice like that?" I was like, I, I don't know. You have to talk to Brandon about that.
Yeah.
So in
Let
his
me take
mind,
a note
he
of
has
my
a
voice
very
changes.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's hilarious. Oh, it's so funny because he sees you out and about in town, and or he sees Deja out and about in town and interacts with Deja all the time, and
Yeah.
so it just never even, I guess, in his world, Deja's
Right. And I love that. That's how it should
awesome,
be. I
right?
have, before COVID, I was having donuts. I would have like monthly donuts with 2 little girls who would come to my story time because they wanted to have donuts with Deja. They got Brandon, but the fact that they were still having donuts with Deja in some degree, it's great. So the fact that I can, surprise kiddos and make their little minds, spin even more is great. So
Yeah, yeah. So, one of the things that fascinates me, and I talk about it almost every episode, is the level of resistance slash violence that we get when we start blending genders, right? So, at this point in our culture, I would assert, and it's funny because you said dating yourself, because the gay bar that I was hanging out with, it was a gay bar, and we used to call it the Hide a Gay. It
sure.
was called the Hideaway. That was way before my Flanagans, I think, because that was back in the
Yeah.
90s. I left in 99 and came back in 2007. So I think that's when I kind of missed you. But so, same then as now. But even then, I think it was harder on gay men. But now we've moved into a place where being a white gay man is like, so, like to some degree, it's like you just don't get the same
Totally.
level of crap that you'd used to. But put on a dress and all of a sudden people are pissed off. It's like, so have you had that? I mean, because you're in a small town where people really love you, right? And so have you had resistance from that perspective from Deja, or has it just been like, oh, that's Brandon, it's cool, and everybody's good?
No, 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 definitely. I definitely have had those eye awakening moments. We, um, yeah, so obviously being a parent, I have to consider a lot of what I do. Is it safe for me and is it safe for my family and anyone around me?
Right.
Definitely, I like to push the boundaries and, um, you know, push the level of acceptance for people because it makes them think a little bit more on who I am and what I do. But when you receive a call from the FBI because there's death threats made about you and they're going to be coming to your event to take you out, um,
That's terrible.
that definitely is, it takes a moment of pause because you want to continue to do right for yourself. You want to continue to make a difference for yourself, for your family, for your community. Um, but you have to stop and think: is this something I should be continuing to do? I mean, this does not mean anyone should have death threats, and so the fact that this is now happening, and I am starting to, second guess everything I'm doing, really puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
And so for me, I had to stop and dive deeper into myself and figure out what's right. And the fact that death threats come in all shapes and sizes, but when you really stop and think about it, is this going to be a 50 or a 60-year-old man sitting in their basement, the parents' basement on a computer, just trying to stir up shit? And is anything really going to come to fruition? I have to stop and think, and I'm like, you know what? I still need to be out there, and I still need to be a face and a voice for the people who need that, and the people who need to feel accepted and feel loved and supported. And if that's something I can do, then that's what I'm going to do. And of course, I want to make sure that I'm safe in doing everything that I do. Um, but yeah, I think I definitely get that. But in more ways than one, I receive positive support from our community and the nonprofits, the businesses, the individuals that I cross, paths with daily. Someone is always talking about Deja. Oh, when are we going to see Deja again? Or, so it's become a norm
It
to
has.
some degree for
She's part of our
Deja to be,
community. Yeah.
yeah, to be walking down the street. Or, on Sunday, this past Sunday, I had a photo shoot in the Eldridge lobby in their foyer, in full drag, with 10 men right beside me. And so it wasn't even questioned, it was smiled at, a couple pictures were taken and they moved on. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's important. Now, I mean, it's interesting to me, and I circle it or put a line under it because I find it interesting, and I want people to really check themselves around that whole world of here's this beautiful human being, and the minute he puts on a dress right, and makeup, all of a sudden there's a reason to be violent towards you. I mean, it's fascinating to me, right? And I
Right.
agree with you that I want to highlight the fact that I get way more positive stuff than I do negative all the time. Like, I have been an out queer since 1985 and loud about it since 1985, and always my whole life, even through transition, everything, even all of it, I get way more positive than I do negative. And I always make sure to say that because I just get a lot of love. And for me, being out has always been about, and even as a trans person, I've been out for so long that I feel blessed that I get those phone calls from somebody I met 10 years ago, and then their kid just came out as trans, right? So I'm the first person they think of because I'm out. So I get way more positive than negative, but I just like to, make sure people understand that when you're out there, it's an act of service, right? I mean, it really is like you're putting your own life on the line sometimes to be of service, and how generous that is, and the stuff that we really have to think about and deal with sometimes, and why not there are people who are still scared, and there are people who are still unwilling to come out
Right.
and to be and are still afraid, and that's valid,
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I think it's really important to, the fact that we have such an amazing library in this town. The Lawrence Public Library is so open
they're awesome.
to everyone. And the fact that we can host a drag queen story time, um, I have goosebumps thinking about it. And I absolutely love the library for this because they're willing to open their doors. Um, to kiddos and to families who need a place to go to feel one day, 1 hour, 30 minutes sometimes, to feel acceptance and love and just being true to themselves. And it allows them to feel this sense of an awe moment of like, these are my people. And they can leave knowing that they have a place to go. And the fact that Deja can host an event like that and allow, families of all walks of life to be able to come and feel love for one day or for 1 hour, truly means the world to me. And so, yeah, and I just think that, the more that our community is open to the fact that um, there's a man walking down the street in drag, but that person is probably going to do something for someone that day, says a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. And so, just to be clear, also because we're here to educate, so I want to make sure our audience understands that drag queens, and so you, for example, that your gender identity is male, right? You're a
Correct.
cisgendered man, right?
Right.
And that doesn't change because you put on a dress, right?
Right.
And so, I want to make sure people understand the distinction between a drag queen versus a trans woman, right?
Correct.
And there are some trans women that perform, right? That also perform, and that's separate from a drag queen who is, going to perform, or, you step out of your dress and you're a guy.
Yeah. Back to Brandon. Right.
Right. Right. And that's
Yeah.
important that people understand that distinction.
Correct. I by no means want to, you know, uh, poke fun or make fun of trans. That is not drag for me. Drag for me is an art. It's a way of expression, and if anything, it is embracing and supporting the female or the persona
The divine
of
feminine almost. Right.
exactly.
Right.
And the fact that I get to walk in their shoes and support them and what they, how they live their life, and but also raise awareness and do good by putting on a dress, then that's how it is for me. It's all about entertainment and doing my part of doing something in this community and doing something
Right.
in this world. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that I love about it is that it's also historically, hugely part of the queer community. Like historically, drag queens and trans women have, always been there, right? And part of the
Right.
reason is because they couldn't hide themselves, right? Those of us who, I started out the gender reveal party by introducing an old school butch and then a high femme. And part of the
Right.
reason that I did that, and my whole point of it, is that these are the people who can't hide themselves, right? These are the people who had to be out, like butches like me, who we were so butch, like you couldn't. I had basically a dyke stamped across here. Right? I mean, I couldn't hide myself. You could see me coming and be like, "Well, there's somebody queer." It's like
Yeah.
I might as well be out. Right? So, historically, those are the people who really paved the way for, they were the ones at the Stonewall riot. They were the ones. And so one of the things I love about you being in drag in our town is it's like you're giving some history. There's some of that historical lineage of the queer community that you're generously giving to our community, and I love that so much. The other thing that I want to highlight, because you just said this, and it's so interesting that you just said this, that every baby drag queen is born on Halloween. So growing up, you probably didn't see drag queens. Like you didn't see anybody like you until you were like what, 19, or you came out
21,
21,
really.
because you could get into the
I
club
mean,
then.
RuPaul was there.
Right.
She was, we had those kind of Tootsie and
Divine.
those types of line, exactly. But yeah, but otherwise to see in person and up close and in real life, yeah, no, not until I
Right.
was
And to
20.
interact with and or know that they were okay, and they were, I mean, I get this from parents and from young trans men who see that I have a job, 2 kids, a wife, I'm stable. I mean, that's right.
Stable.
basically
Yeah.
stable. And for some of them it's like, oh, I didn't know I could have a future because I can't see myself out there in the world, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that you provide for our community, I'm thinking of one particular little boy right now. I'm not going to say his name, but I think you know who I'm talking about. That because of you, his first drag experience isn't Halloween when he's 21. His
It's
first
true.
drag experience is being 8 or something. Like, is he even 8 yet? I don't know. But my
Yeah.
point is that you provide this lens. I'm a Glisten volunteer. I don't know if you knew that, but I volunteer to educate for Glisten. And one of the things that Glisten always says is that kids need a window to see out of. Obviously, they need to see people who are different than them, but they need a mirror, right? They
Yeah.
need to see, they need a window and a mirror. And when we were growing up, we didn't have a mirror. And I'm much older than you, and even you didn't have a mirror. So we didn't see ourselves on TV. We didn't see ourselves in our own community. We didn't see ourselves anywhere, which for me led to suicidal ideation, to me being just a freaking mess throughout my you know high school life. But here you are providing this mirror for kids who are, little kids, and they already know that that's who they are. I mean, and that's one of the fascinating things to me is when we see someone, it's like a resonance almost. Like we see someone, we're like, oh, that's me. Right? And you've got little kids looking at you like that now. That must feel amazing to you.
It does. I think I'm just going to blame it on lack of sleep, but like I'm kind of getting a little emotional about this. But this one particular kiddo,
It's
the fact
moving. It's
it
moving.
is
It's not,
moving,
it's so
but
powerful.
I also want to give credit where credit is due, and that's to the parents
Yes. I mean, for sure.
that is supporting and allowing their kiddo to be their true authentic self in whatever that shape or form is at this time.
Right.
And at this time, if this little kiddo wants to, put on a wig and paint his nails and just be fabulous in his own skin, that is so freaking cool that like his mom and dad um, support that.
Same.
And that's like, yeah, that's so it's amazing. And I hope that more kiddos have that experience with support, whether that is from their parents or from an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent, a neighbor, their local drag queen, like whomever they need to go to for that support. They just have to have that one person that believes in them and truly supports them, and gives them the smile and gives them the hope and the love that they need and deserve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because so many little kids, and I know so many trans people have had this experience where then they start to express themselves in a gender that wasn't assigned to them, then they're beaten down or they're told no or they're shamed or they're, told they're a freak and all that kind of stuff. And I think I mean, I know that's still happening, but I have a lot of faith, for example, in that particular couple that we know here in town, plus others that I know
Yeah.
who are just letting their kids explore and figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's
You know,
brilliant.
I got to work with Rainbow Family and Kids. You know about
Yeah.
Rainbow Kids and Families, and
Yeah. We have a
and
rainbow kid.
right, right, yeah. And the
Yeah.
fact that we now have that organization here in Lawrence, and the fact that they are putting themselves out there and getting into schools at an early age for kiddos to start making a difference is so stellar. Um, it's needed. You know this. I mean, you know this firsthand how much this is needed. And so I love the fact that Lawrence, um, out of the over 500 nonprofits we have here, that's one of them. And
Yeah.
so,
Me
yeah,
too. I was also over the moon that they won transformations last year or year
they
before last,
did.
or
Yeah,
whenever we did it.
yeah. 2020.
What year are we? I don't even know what
Yeah,
what year is it? Right. Yeah, it's fantastic. Very, very
right.
fantastic. So one of the things that I had a question, you mentioned it earlier about the houses and that some drag queens have a house they belong to and things like that. Can you speak to
Yeah.
that historically a little bit? There's, some people may be familiar with the movie Pose or the TV show Pose,
Right.
which speaks to houses. And For the Midwest and Lawrence, I don't think it saw as much of that as maybe Kansas City, who's a little bit more citified. But can
Sure.
you explain the history of that and how that works and all those
Yeah.
things?
The history, I mean, Pose, if you haven't seen it, or if you have seen it, Pose does a really good job of highlighting and showcasing the history of how balls came about and how families came about. And really, for those individuals who were abandoned or thrown out of their houses, they needed a place to go and a place to feel at home. And whether or not it was drag or just ballroom itself, being a part of a group, part of a home, these mothers would bring in these kids, that were orphaned or, displaced, and would provide them, love and shelter and a roof and stability and food, everything that we need in order to survive. And it became, you would take their last name, it became the house of the Andrews, or I mean, that to me is a stellar family, that the Andrews. But that really is how houses or families came about. And so you would just continue that legacy of that name. And for me, I have so many inspiring families um, a part of my life, that I say I'm an independent woman, and I have fabulous aunties. But for me to be able to truly select one name, um, is not the case. I want to embrace and cherish and celebrate so many families. And so, House of Couture, my good friend Mulan in Kansas City, she now has her house, which is House of Couture. The Andrews family, like there's just so many talented and supportive individuals that make up these houses, and that's kind of what that is. And someday maybe I'll have a drag baby, a drag kiddo, and maybe they'll want to continue the name of Brooks. But until then, I want them to first find who they are and provide support where that's needed.
Where did you get the name Deja Brooks?
um, well, deja vu. Like, I think I've seen you before, but how do I see you? Are you the same person? And then Brooks, I think Brooks is everything Deja is not. A tranquil, peaceful stream, a brook, a creek, a river, everything that's so peaceful in the Midwest or all over, really. And sometimes Deja is not peaceful and is not tranquil. So I find that quite funny, that Deja Brooks. But I also think it flows. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And in some of the other interviews I've had, I interview a high femme who as an MC. She is Bubbling Sugar, for example, and that's a stage persona, right? And so you get to do that with Deja. It's a lot of like Sasha Fierce. Beyonce is steps onto the stage and it's Sasha Fierce. Beyonce, if you ever
Right.
seen her interviewed, is pretty demure. I mean, she's very soft spoken. She's not that fierce booty shaking person that's out on the stage.
Right. Yeah.
And you get to do similarly. Deja, what people need to know is Deja's a little off the chart. She's a little over the top. What we would say, right?
Yeah.
Right.
She does. Yeah. She has to really work her crowd and know her environment to some degree. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that like, does it serve kind of an outlet for you? Do you feel awesome when you step off the stage and then you take off your makeup and you go back to being Brandon?
Yeah, it is. I use the word a lot, and you use the word a lot as well, but it's truly, I truly get to transform myself into my other persona. And
Yeah.
the fact that I can, put on a wig and eyelashes, and seal the deal with nails, um, and hit the stage for, a couple hours, I am truly exhausted by the time I get home and take everything off. I I don't mind not talking to people for a day or two afterwards because it takes a lot. You know this, you know, being who you are and being out and serving your purpose of, who you are in this community. But it really is draining when you're on the go and you have to be on it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
totally get Beyonce for that, like,
Right.
yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine having to be her? Like, poor lady, everywhere she goes, Beyonce, Beyonce.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
wouldn't mind just being part of her closet of
No,
costumes.
me neither.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind being part of the entourage for sure.
Right. Right.
Right. So, did you get a chance to see that gender reveal party?
I did. I'm really bummed that I didn't get to see it in person when you got to do it,
Mm-hmm.
a couple of venues here in
Mm-hmm.
town.
Yeah.
But the fact that I finally was able to see it, and I knew some of your story from attending, Lean In and those things like that. Um, but the fact that I got to truly hear it again just truly resonated with me, Jay. I appreciate the fact that you continue to put your story out there because truly it's education and it's opening the minds. I go back to this a lot, but it's all about that. It's about education and opening minds. And I think with the gender reveal party, you can laugh and joke and poke fun at yourself, but in the end, people are walking away with a sense of, oh shit, yeah, that's real. And they need that. They need to hear that. They need to experience that and feel that, not only for themselves, but for family members who may be, going through that. Or, yeah, there's so much to it. There's so much to it. I think you literally have put the icing on the cake, when
Oh,
it comes
thanks.
to what this is. So,
Yeah, thank
yeah.
you. I appreciate that. It's
Yeah.
been so interesting because, it just kind of got birthed out of me when I went off testosterone. I couldn't stop the download of the comedy. I mean, I tell people this a lot. It's still coming. I mean, being someone who's perceived as male with a vagina is hilarious. I mean, especially being taken as a straight man because everybody assumes because Jessica's, so femme that we are a straight couple. So people, we get heterosexual privilege, which I didn't even really understand until it got handed to me. Um, but it was just something that had to get birthed. But then I did that, and now it's turning into this podcast, this video, whatever we're calling this thing. I don't even know what it is. I'm just doing it for fun. But it's so fun to actually reveal gender powerfully. And so I think
Right.
that's the big thing for me is that if I can get anybody to take away that gender and genitals are so not the same thing, and we could
Right.
stop
Right.
it, just stop it. I want to just say, stop it. Like, the damage people do to these little kids based on, identifying them by their genitals. They just have no
Right.
concept. So I'm hoping to just kind of wake people up a little bit. And I've had great response with that. So thank you. I appreciate. I was bummed too
Yeah.
because I mean, you're somebody I really was like, please show up on my show. So I'm glad you got
Yeah.
it. I wanted to share it with you, so I'm glad I got a chance to.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that, even for me, still to this day, labels and things like that, I still am working on that myself. Of, well, what do you want to be called? Like, who are you? Like, just trying to remove the label, but still understand education.
Right. Right.
We all are learning and evolving, but yeah, I think what you bring to the stage and what you bring to now film, being able to share this, um, hopefully will impact even more people to be able to understand that, wow, this is two different worlds, and we need to treat that in different ways. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I've heard my whole life, because I always have been in, from the moment, for me, I had this moment where, and I can't even say that at the time I knew it was a moment. You know what I mean? Like you can look back in 2020 hindsight and see, oh, that was when I figured out this, right? But at the time, you're just living your life and you don't know. So I didn't realize it was a moment then, but I'm clear now that when I was a young suicidal youth, once I figured out that there was nothing wrong with me because I was gay. Like, because for me, I'm looking in the DSM at this point. I mean, I'm thinking I am a psychopath. I am sexually and mentally deranged because I want to, get with other girls. And so I really felt that way. So once I discovered that that was BS, like there was nothing wrong with me, right? I'm whole and complete being gay. For me, it was like cork is out. I'm off. I mean, I'm done. I was so suicidal and hated myself so much that when that got healed for me, it was like, I'm out. Right. And
Right.
so my whole life, people have said things to me like, I don't care that you're queer. I don't care that you're gay, but why do you have to be so in your face about it? Like, why do you have to be so out? Why do you have to be talking about it all the time? Do you hear that from people still? Because I still hear this from people. So
Yeah,
why do we have to be so out? Why do we have to talk about it all the time?
exactly. Um, I know exactly how I'm going to answer this. Yeah, the fact that we're both parents, um, the fact that I have a kiddo and from an early age, his family was different. His family consisted of a mom, a Jerry, and a dad. Um, and that was different than the typical
Right.
suburban,
And do you
family,
care
a
if we share
mom,
with the
a dad.
audience about the mom and Jerry? Is
Yeah,
that the
so
lesbian couple, right?
correct. Yeah, and they've been together for many years at this point.
Since I
And
was like 18 or something, because that's when I met him.
yeah, you're friends with them. You knew them before I did. And so to have a kiddo was something his mom had wanted for many years. And um, I had always wanted to have kids, but I felt that for me, kids would come in the form of adoption because kids need, every kid needs a home and to feel love. And so I also believe in paying it forward. And so I was approached and asked if I would be willing to help out, to make a donation, if you will, and support this this want, this void, this need of a child. And in the end, what it gave us was it gave us both something that we wanted. Not only to have a child, but to become parents. And so we co-parent. Our son goes back and forth. He doesn't know any different. He has two houses. Um, he has, like I said, a mom, a dad, and a Jerry. And someday maybe he'll have a Rick or a Bob or a Tom. Who knows? Fingers crossed. I keep waiting, but they say when you stop looking, you'll find someone. But I stop looking every day, and I'm still looking, but whatever. So that's how our son came about, and the fact that he's just grown up with this life. Um, of knowing the difference between families and knowing what is different about him, and the fact that we were always educating and pre-teaching to what this looks like. And so the fact that when he would go to school and he would get questioned, he would have answers to be able to back up the questions that he was getting asked. And that even came to educating his teachers at an early age and bringing books into his classroom that had to do with same-sex couples and
Heather has
families
two
of
mommies kind of thing.
Tom Parr is an amazing author. And so the fact that these Parr books were not in classrooms, um, it needed to change. And so to get back to your question, the fact that we have kiddos, we have to put ourselves out there, and we have to give them the resources and the tools um, for them to feel confident in who they are. And so if I can educate my kiddo to be able to turn around and educate his classmates, his peers, his teachers, that ball just continues to roll and get bigger and bigger. It's like a snowball. It just truly gets bigger. And the more you do that, the more I put myself out there, the more that I raise an eyebrow from some people. The fact that I can turn a head, the fact that I can sit on a panel and answer questions, the fact that I can host nonprofit, charity events, the fact that I can, be seen in a group of straight heterosexuals in a full gown and make them think for one moment, huh, this isn't so bad to be standing next to this individual. There's no harm in me. And
Right.
uh, there's some evolution, there's some eye-opening experiences, and we all have our part to play. We all
Agree.
have our part to play. It's whether or not you step up to play that part. It's whether or not you step up to make a difference. And I feel like there are some that really do that, and there are some that do not. And if I can be over the top to make up for the people who are not doing it, then I'm doing something.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
And for me, has always started like I have, I'm the youngest of nine. I have 27 nieces and nephews and 28 great nieces and nephews, and I think we're on 15 or 16 great nieces. I mean, I'm from a huge family. So for me,
Wow.
it started with my own family. It was like, I don't want any of my, I knew that 1 out of 10 people were at the time, that was way back in the Kinsey scale day, right? 1 out of 10 people is going to be homosexual. So I have a huge family. There's no way that I'm the only one. So I thought, at first it started with, I don't want any of my nieces and nephews to want to kill themselves because they're queer. Like that for me, it was about my nieces and nephews immediately. Then when I started being out and sitting on those panels, I remember very specifically a day at KU when I was telling my story out on the Wesco campus, and it was National Coming Out Day. And that night I was out at, I think, Buddy's or one of the gay bars in Kansas City, maybe the Cabaret, I don't know. But I was out
Uh-huh.
at a bar, and this young woman stopped me and said, "You're Janet Pryor," because I was using my female name at the time. "You're Janet Pryor." And I was like, "Yeah, hi." And she was like, "You changed my life today." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "I heard you tell your coming out story on Wesco Beach." And she said, "And I thought, if you can share that in front of all of these people, I can tell my mom."
Yeah.
And I just
Yeah.
went, "Ah," like, and I was like, "Oh my God, how'd it go?" Like she was
Yeah.
like, "It went okay." Like we bonded. And I mean, it was just that moment for me was like, that's why right there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
because it's that little kid that doesn't have to wait till Halloween to put a dress on, right? It's that difference that you're making. So this is why we're out and why we continue to be out. And one of the things I love about you is that, just like you said, there are people who are out who aren't always people I want my kids to talk to. Right? I mean, there are lots of people who are being out and doing stuff, and you're somebody who is out there making this huge difference, but also doing it from a lens of, I want kids to be able to have access to me. I want this to be somewhat wholesome. It's like you make drag queening wholesome, if that's possible.
Whatever that is. Yeah.
Right? I wouldn't, whatever wholesome is for a drag queen, but you have
Mhm.
made Deja Brooks a community member, right? Deja is just as much part of our community as Brandon is.
Right.
Don't you
Yeah.
think? I would,
Whether or not I want that or not at this point.
right? Exactly. Like it or not,
Yeah.
Deja is part of the community. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that I want to just continue to acknowledge and appreciate you for, because it's such a
Thank
gift to our community, and I think it's part of what makes our community unique. I mean, there's how many little towns in Kansas have a drag queen that's part of the community as, much as anybody else.
I mean, if I went, 7 miles down the road to my hometown, that's
No,
not an option.
no.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
it's not an option. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're
And,
very
and
blessed.
there's kiddos there, that need that, but hopefully they can get to, the bigger cities around them that have this opportunity for them to feel a sense of true self.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So any last thoughts you'd like to share with our audience?
I am on this kick of dragging yourself out, and there's so much that goes into drag yourself out. But I get questioned, and whenever I see people at events, they're like, "Oh my God, I knew you were coming, so I had to put on a little bling, or I needed to wear, something sparkly because I knew you were
Oh,
going to be here. But so there's that aspect of dragging yourself out, but it's also dragging yourself out of your comfort zone, taking the approach to learn something new, stepping out of what can make a difference and how you can help, make a difference. Drag yourself out. And so um, I think if anyone can do something, it's truly that. Just make a difference, step out, drag yourself out, do whatever feels good, but it's also making a difference and um, making a meaningful difference to someone around you, whether that's you, a family member, your neighbor, whatever that may be.
thank you,
Yeah.
Brandon. Where can we
Yeah.
find you and or Deja?
Yeah.
Where can
So
my audience find you?
my social media handles. You can follow me on Facebook at Deja Brooks. You can follow me on Instagram at Deja Brooks, Kansas. Um, and then my male persona is obviously on Instagram and Facebook as well. So,
You know what? Before we close, I can't believe I forgot this because you were like royalty, right? You are royalty. You are.
kind of
So
has been,
Deja.
yeah,
Yeah,
has been, yeah,
has been.
and
Right. And we
forever.
didn't talk about that and we don't have to, but I just think that's so cool that like there is like a pageantry amongst drag queens
Oh,
and
of
that
course.
and I would just wanted to say that like, I moved back here in 2007. When did Deja come out? Like how have you when was that year?
Oh my gosh, it has been, what was I, 22, 23, I think is when Deja kind of, 23 is when Deja started like, coming out. And then 2005, yeah, 2003, 2005 was when I really kind of
Started.
really started
So by the time I
that.
got here in 2007, Deja was out, right?
Yeah.
And so I have seen you perform from the time I got here in 2007 to now, right? And when I saw you perform at that pageant, you were your best I've ever seen. I mean,
Thank
she was over the top. She was
thank
so good. And so I just want to acknowledge that like your growth as a performer is also super cool. And that's something you get to do as a performer, like as an artist. We get to
love
grow in our, in our trade, if you will,
it.
through and your
If you're not
performances.
growing, are you having fun? Like,
Right.
you have
Yes.
to, yeah.
It
Yeah,
has
I
to
was
be fun.
crowned the very first Miss Gay Kansas, United States.
Yes,
So
thank you for saying that. That's what I was waiting
yeah,
for.
yeah.
That's
The fact that
awesome.
it was here in Lawrence, Kansas, in my backyard, in my community, um, was the best for me. The fact that I can truly say that I was the very first Miss Gay Kansas, United States, and so
That's
um,
brilliant.
pageantry is huge in the drag world, and the fact that we can now have that here in Lawrence and Kansas itself is great. So
Well, it's another way that you drag yourself out. You know what I mean? Like that was
right,
another thing that you did that you pushed I could, I knew it was like you're pushing your comfort zone, you're pushing yourself to do that. And it made another opportunity to make a huge difference. So
yeah. Thank
thank
you.
you, my friend. Thanks for being on the gender reveal party. We appreciate you so much. And just I'm grateful people get to know you.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Gender Reveal Party podcast. I hope you loved it. And if you did, would you take a second and go do all the things like subscribe, rate, review, tell all your friends? Apparently, if you do that, the podcast platforms are more likely to share it. And if you think these stories are important, please take 3 minutes to just go do that. I'd really appreciate it. Also, I'd love to connect with you on social. On Instagram and Facebook, I'm at the Gender Reveal Party, and on Twitter, I'm at Prior J. It's a real joy and privilege to bring you this podcast. Come back soon. Love you, bye.